Your thoughts on just what went on as far as the Supreme Court's concerned? I haven't had a chance to get your thoughts on this.
Well, from a legal standpoint, we're kind of still digesting and talking with House attorneys about that opinion. I was not around in the legislature as a large portion of my colleagues when that initiative process came into being, so to speak, in the 90s, early 90s. And so I've heard from some of those guys who were there when they passed that and put the process in the way it is. So we were a little bit unfamiliar. Of course, we were very familiar with that AG opinion that said, oh, well, just go with the 5. Get your signatures from the 5 and roll on. Because we've all learned to know, right? An AG opinion is the law. I remember that's what they've told us on more than one occasion, even though we disagree. But regardless of that, so we hadn't paid it a lot of attention, and I know some people are tore up about that. They're like, y'all should have fixed it. But there just wasn't a big drive to fix it. And now I'm looking at what other states do and the way that they do it. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to not only fix the 5 to 4 and figure out what that proportion, get that language right, but also get right how we do our ballot initiative process.
Jason, was there any concerns after 65 was passed that maybe it's time to take a look at this thing and give it some consideration? Certainly, even after that.
Well, it was. For one thing, on the ballot, you're limited in how many words you can put on there to explain to the voter what they're voting on, because for all of the clamoring, whether we're talking about 65 or any other ballot initiative, a lot of people do not know. They weren't schooled on the front end, and they went in there because they wanted to vote for Paul Gallo or Perez or whoever they're voting for. They didn't go in there to vote on this initiative, so they see it, they're confronted with it, and they vote. And I'm not dispelling the idea that 74%
See, we almost have.
voted.
Here's what gets me. We almost have to make a disclaimer. It's like. It's almost like saying that, please forgive me for having this thought process. When you say an initiative process that gives the people of the state of Mississippi, when the legislature fails to do something, the right to vote, and then you hold dear that, and then all of a sudden say, well, that initiative process is broken. You can say both things, and they both may be true.
I think they are
true. And the process is broken for a multitude of reasons. Cultures change, social media, the amount of money that goes into something like this, the fact that it's not spelled out. And if you've got the money, somebody mentioned the other day, this has become a cottage industry of putting these initiatives in here. I think we can say both things, that it is broken, but it is a good system and it needs to be changed.
It's a good system. It needs to be fixed, but it needs to be changed as well. Maybe that's I think you said it well. I think that's the way it should be. And I think going forward, I think it takes more than a quick look in a special session just to fix the ballot initiative process. I think it's between now and January we should get that right and fix it. In the meantime, maybe we should come back and go ahead and fix this medical marijuana issue. So
you lean to where the speaker leans that if you're going to call a special session, let's take care of the medical marijuana.
That's where
and the initiative process. And I think the lieutenant governor is on board too, for the most part, saying we probably have more time because the initiative cannot be taken care of not till next November, or it would be next November.
Next November at the earliest, because it would require a vote if we're changing it. But we could go ahead and get it fixed in session in the spring.
I've heard contrary opinions on this one, and I think Philip said yesterday when he was on that it's not necessary. The voter ID cannot be challenged because it's in statute.
It was codified after the fact, and so it is. And I've had some conversations with my Farm Bureau friends who are concerned about the eminent domain thing.
I had a conversation off the air yesterday about that. Your thoughts?
Well, I think we can fix that statutorily in January as well. I think we can come in and put that in statute. Is it as tight and good as being in the Constitution?
Yep.
Maybe not, but probably not. But it will be law that's there that would preserve those rights, and nobody's, the sky's not falling, and then we'll figure out going forward.
For people who don't understand this eminent domain, it has nothing to do with the public as far as government's concerned. It's more private.
Correct. In not taking private landowners for some other private business, so to speak.
No.
And there was a lot of concern about that, and Farm Bureau got behind it. Remember, there was a big push.
I did.
And I would say those things rise to a level of a constitutional right issue. Should expansion of Medicaid, should marijuana, should those things really be in our Constitution? I think they should be in statute.
I'm not getting paid from Alabama, believe me, but I mentioned this yesterday, and I don't want to overdo it because people think I'm getting money from the people in Alabama on this. But, I mean, when you start reading what they did and signed into law Monday of this week, it just seems to be a perfect tool for us. They've done their homework for us in a couple of different ways. If it's and again, as I mentioned, it's not that we have to mirror them, but the more it does mirror it, the more compatibility there is from crossing state lines, and that seems to be something that is a positive, not a negative.
I think it's a positive. I agree.
If you read that one, you go back and you look at exactly, I think there's 15 or so different illnesses or ailments that can be used, and it was quite liberal in how many people they covered.
It was. It differs it differs greatly.
In which ways did you see it different?
Well, here's what I see, first of all.
Yeah.
You've got a group of people who are clamoring that 74% voted for this. I would tell you, for the Republican folks sitting there, that 26% that voted no were probably some of their main supporters. So they're concerned, and they're hearing from those people of, hey, we're good with medical marijuana. We want you to fix it and be a little more conservative with it than the way it hit the ballot that maybe everybody didn't know about. I think Alabama's closer to that, and I think we could be closer to that.
Well, I don't disagree because, I mean, they don't allow smoking in here, not even terminally ill patients.
But Paul, you know this. Mm-hmm. 65 was a one-off from recreational use of marijuana.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I've got friends that'll be upset and tore up that I said that here to you on statewide radio, but it was. It is as it exists. If it had gone into law, it was a one-off from recreational. And we need to be at least willing to have a conversation and acknowledge that.
Well, that's why you go to social media and you see a lot of young people who probably do not have a aunt who's terminal, and they are all in on this thing.
They are tore up.
They are tore up. They don't want to be charged if they've got a small amount of marijuana on them. They want it decriminalized, and we understand that. But
it's where that generation is. I would just say I think there's room to have a robust medical marijuana program, but also factor in our local governments and the way that they zone the areas and be like any other business. It shouldn't have any protections that any other business doesn't have. There are ways to make it work.
I think some of the concerns, and we heard that from Ken Newberger yesterday, was on with me at one of the organizations, nonprofit organizations, who will be representing a lot of the potential growers and processors, et cetera, was that they didn't want limits on it, how many people could come into a community. That's something that is limited in the Alabama, and I think that's something that every single hometown in the state of Mississippi wants.
I've heard from those mayors.
There are opt-outs, and we ought to have opt-outs in here. If somebody doesn't want it, they ought to be able to opt out in it.
Look, we preach all the time about local rule is best, home rule is best, folks closest to the people are best to make those decisions. I tend to be one of those guys that thinks that.
What do you think this is, because we haven't heard from the Department of Health, but there's got to be a sigh of relief there.
Well, a sigh of relief, but I think even they realize, and Dr. Dobbs knows, and we've had conversations about the fact that we're going to have a program, and I think most of us have committed to that. It's just, let's get it right. Let's get it right.
Do you think the House and Senate can come together on this one before the governor calls a special session? We'll ask that question more to the Speaker Pro Tem, Jason White. Coming up with the one and only Jason White, who's Speaker Pro Tem. We were talking about a multitude of different things, but so what do you think the chances are that the House, the Senate, and the governor's office will get together before, and maybe just see what the template is, what the goalposts look like to get to as far as medical marijuana? You think we have time to do that?
Paul, I think we have time to do that. I think some conversations are starting, and I think maybe everybody can sit down in the next week or two, figure out what we can and can't agree on, and see if there's a way forward, especially as it relates to the medical marijuana program. I think we can get there on that because we weren't that far apart. And let me say, our my friends in the Senate, yes, they did pass a bill. I forget I think it was 2765 was that bill, and they had a committee sub for it. And I don't know if you remember in the session when that bill played out. I hear a lot of my friends in the Senate saying, "Oh, we had a bill if the House had just moved." Well, what I remember about that bill was it took several forms. They had to push it in there after midnight one night and have a lot of people disappear. Still couldn't get a vote. They finally put a reverse repealer in it to get a vote. So to say that even the Senate had consensus on a medical marijuana program is just not true. They had to put a reverse repealer, which means I could vote on this bill because it doesn't become law.
Well, wait a minute, because I heard somebody was on the air with me and said at one point it would mirror what 65 was.
No, sir.
Nobody wanted that. I mean, that's one of the problems we have now.
No, sir. It did not mirror Initiative 65 at all. And you can look it up for yourself. But it had taxes. It had dedicated where those tax monies went. I'm more of a guy that if we do tax it, it should go to the general fund and not be earmarked anywhere. And there are a lot of people around the cap like that. So I'm saying there are very fine details that have to be worked out about those type of things, as well as how many dispensaries, all of amounts, all of that stuff. And there was no consensus in the Senate. They did pass a vehicle, if you will. They did pass a bill. But like I said, it even had a reverse repealer that meant it repeals before it becomes law.
Have you heard any? Because the Department of Health was going along as if this thing was going to happen. So I would imagine that they've had some things that they've already put in that folder. This is how it's going to. Have you looked at that? Or have you seen that?
I personally have not. We have had conversations with Dr. Dobbs, and we dispatched our public health chairman, Sam Mims, and he met with Dr. Dobbs yesterday at length. To start the process of saying, hey, where are you? What does that look like? What are your thoughts, Doc, on how we put this in place? In other words, we recognize he knows a fair amount more about this than we do, and we're interested in his input and other true medical professionals' inputs on how this works.
So not only you have to implement this, but you have to put a game plan together for the departments and everything else, like Alabama has originated, I think, their Cannabis Commission, and the Cannabis Commission is going to, from what I understand, they will count on the Department of Agriculture to do this, public safety to do that, and et cetera. So they're meeting this out to different agencies. Are we talking about still letting the health department do the entire thing?
No, I think the health department will do it in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture. Yeah. It's kind of what we're looking at.
The Department of Public Safety be the overall enforcement of it?
And DPS would be overall enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems to be the logical or common sense way of doing that.
Sure, and again, we're talking about all these different moving parts, and I'm not throwing shade on the Senate, because yes, they did pass a bill. I make the point about their bill to say there's still lots of opinions about exactly what that legislation should look like that we do have to iron out. To answer your original question, I do think we could do that.
Yeah, but in all fairness to the Senate too, we were scrambling for something to be just a valve, a safety valve for this thing if it went the wrong way, which it did.
It did go the wrong way. I would just tell you nobody wanted it in the form of that bill, or at least my colleagues.
Well, the same thing. And, of course, after the success of that, the Medicaid expansion came forth, certainly put together by the Hospital Association. And one of the things that a lot of people I've talked to, and I know you've mentioned it before, is we've got to figure out who's funding these things. I mean, because a lot of times, I don't care if it's Joe in Ocean Springs or Mary in Clarksdale, there are people out there who understand something's going on here. We were not even concerned about medical marijuana 4 or 5 years ago. Legislature couldn't go to their hometown meetings and say, look, I'm thinking about pushing forth medical marijuana. You would have been run out. Then all of a sudden with $6 million in promotional, that's the top thing. That's the number one concern of all Mississippians.
And you were fixing to see that play out on an expansion of the Medicaid issue.
How dare you not take the expansion?
Well, how dare you not help, this hardworking guy and get him some insurance that's, quote, free.
So is there a
the
possibility for us in the state legislature to say, look, if you fund these initiatives, we, the people of the state of Mississippi, at least want to know who you are?
I think that should be a part when we examine this initiative process. That should be an integral part of looking at it, is requiring more and better disclosure about who's actually linked to these things. You can look at what the Hospital Association is doing with expansion of Medicaid. Follow that money trail and see where it goes down. When I get to clicking, and I'm not a good computer tech generation like I should be, at my age I should be better, and I'm not. But even after clicking just about 3 times, Stacey Abrams' face starts popping up.
Really?
And, yeah.
Whoa. Back up, Jack.
Yeah. So,
you mean in the Hospital Association?
Yes, sir.
Stacey Abrams of Georgia?
Yes, sir. And look up those projects that and those catch names and phrases. All that stuff pops up around that. And so I hate it for my friends at the Hospital Association, but it's just a fact. There's an agenda there that may not just be about getting Mississippians some affordable health care.
Well, I think in the same manner, it was not just about getting some help for your dying relative or your family member who just couldn't find where normal or traditional medicines didn't work. I understand we have those people in the state of Mississippi, and God bless them.
We do.
Hopefully we can take care of them.
Commissioner Cheney is working hard on trying to find a way through this that makes sense, and I commend him for it. And there's a way to do it. I'm all ears about that. What I'm not about is somebody co-opting our ballot initiative process to push through something with an agenda that has nothing to do with getting Mississippians health care.
Speaker Pro Tem, it's Jason White. Before we have time gone here, I do want to ask you, give me an update. Is the resolve still as strong in the House and with the Speaker as far as the personal income tax fight, which looms for the 2022 session?
It is. And we've been having meetings with our friends on the Senate end of the building, and I think they've been productive. We're engaged in that. Mm-hmm. I think it's more likely than not that we will have a product that we can all agree on in the spring.
Well, when you start talking about both sides, and I talk to so many different people, here's what I hear. The Speaker, everybody he talks to wants it, and the Lieutenant Governor, everybody he talks to doesn't want it. How do you bring that together? So,
as they say, Paul, in the middle of the night.
Well, in the middle of the night, the governor's got to be somewhere to turn the light on and off. But I mean, that's just a reality of it.
It is a reality, but the good thing is the governor, has said that he supports elimination of the personal income tax.
Yeah.
And so we're going to take that and run with it. And I do think that our colleagues in the Senate are for something, and I think we can get them something that they can be.
But as far as you know, looking at where we are through the summer planning period, even considering the Medicaid expansion is not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, no.
It may be a bigger push in the Senate than the House.
It could be, and we hadn't specifically talked about that. Mm-hmm. I think everybody had just let that idea go because now it was going to a ballot initiative, and whatever was going to be was going to be, so to speak. So nobody had spent a lot of time internally on that other than Commissioner Cheney.
And I know you talk to finance every once in a while, and you look at what we've got coming in, a lot of money here and there. We talked about a special session. I think we talked to the governor when
the check came this week for the first half of the $1.8 billion. $900 million came, I think, day before yesterday.
That was a nice check, wasn't it?
It was a nice check.
It was a nice check. Did you stick it in the bank?
It is in the bank. It is in the bank.
How much was it?
$900 million. Yeah, Miss Welch over at DFA made a hefty deposit.
Is there a time limit of use on that one, or is that open-ended?
I think you've got to implement it maybe by 24, and it's got to be spent by 27, I think. And you'll get the other half. We'll get the other half of that this time next year, or next June of 22.
So there's no immediate need for a special session on
No immediate need for a special session.
Where does that supposed to go to? And this is not even talking about infrastructure now. We're talking about something else.
It's that money's pretty loose, Paul. It can even be used for lost revenues. I heard some figures. We may be, I don't know how, because with all the money that's flowing into the state, but it seems like our revenue, somebody said we may have lost revenue of about $200 million. But just for this year, we're fixing to end up almost $900 million.
Last I heard, I was quoting 7. Philip said it's closer to 8 and might even end up.
It's going to end up in
900, or near $1 billion, which is absolutely incredible. So it's good talking to you, sir.
It's good to be here, Paul.
I appreciate it.
A lot going on. Interesting time.